Shankar, working as an assistant professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Maharaja Institute of Technology, Mysore. So I'll be taking up classes on automata theory and computability, which is a subject for 5th semester, and the subject code is 18CS54. So today we'll learn about the subject. I'll be talking about the introduction of the subject, and we'll see in what context this subject has its applicability. So we have several objectives for today's class. So the first objective is to learn what is an automata. The second objective is to learn what is computability. So the third one is to know what are the types of automatas that are available. And lastly, we'll be speaking about applications and the formal languages which are going to be used in this subject. So when we look at the title of the subject, that is nothing but automata theory and computability. So we can see there are two things in the title itself. So first one is called as automata theory, and the second one is nothing but the computability. So we need to understand what is automata theory, and also we need to understand what is computability. So when we say theory, it's a study. So study of automata is called as a automata theory. And once we know what is automata theory, we'll move ahead and see what is computability. So what we do here is, so first we'll see what is an automata. So an automata can be defined as an abstract machine which will be used to model the computations. And we'll see why we need automata. So first of all, automatas are models, and they will allow us to model some essential part of the system and ignore some non-essentials. So when we talk about automata, and we are talking or saying that it is an abstract machine, so what we first think of as a machine is a physical computer or a device. But automatas are not hardwired, and they are not available as a hardware. So these are just theoretical machines that can accept some input and will give us some output. So these are just abstract, non-existent machines. And the models are necessary in engineering because when we consider as an example a civil engineer who wants to build a bridge, he will not go ahead and start building the bridge and then test for its sustainability. So in the beginning, he's going to build up a model and vary several levels of stress and strain. He's going to calculate several parameters, and only then when the exact model or the necessary model is in place, only then the construction will begin. So therefore, model as a whole in engineering becomes very important, and hence these abstract machines or models are used for modeling the computation. So once we learn about what is automata and what they are, so basically they are models. Next we'll move ahead and see what is computability. So before we see what is computability, we'll define what is a computation. So anything that can be computed is called as a computation. For example, addition of two numbers is computation. Also, multiplying of two matrices can also be called as computation. We can perform these computation because we have an algorithm that defines a procedure for calculating or computing them, so we can compute them. So anything which is for anything that can be solved is called as computable, and the process is called as the computability. And we should also know that not every problem in engineering is computable. So we have several problems for which the algorithms are not defined, and such problems are non-computable. So we apply these automatas in order to we use these automata in order to compute something. We use the automatas to model the several computations. So next, we'll go ahead and see what are the different types of automatas. So when we want to say or know what is the types of automatas, so first one is DFSM. So this is an abbreviation for deterministic finite state machines. So the second one is NFSM. So this is non-deterministic finite state machines. The third one is the Turing machines. And the fourth one is PDA, that stands for push down automata. So these are the different automatas, classes of automatas that we are going to study in the entire course. So the first module is going to cover the DFSM, that is the deterministic finite state machines and non-deterministic finite state machines. We will be studying about Turing machines in module 4 and PDA in module 4. So therefore, these are machines which do not exist practically, but they will accept some input and give us an output. The output will always be accepted, or acceptable output is got only when the problem is computable. In case the problem is not computable, we do not get output from these machines. So next, we are going to learn about the applications of automatas, which is very important to know in this current context. So next, we are going to discuss about the applications of automatas. So the first application of the automatas are in the design and study of the compilers. So far we have studied C programming and object-oriented concepts, that is C++ in your previous semesters, and we are aware of what are compilers. So compilers are the one which check the syntax and the semantics of a language and give you the result saying whether you are conform to the semantics and the syntax or not. So first application is in the design of the compilers. So the compilers will execute in several steps before they give you the result, and the very first step of the compilers are lexical analysis. The second step in the compilers or compilation is syntax analysis. So these are the first two steps in the compilation process. So the automatas are used in both the steps. So we look at the first step, that is the lexical analysis, and this is also called as scanning. The second one is syntax analysis, and this process is also called as parsing. So the job of the lexical analyzer or a lexical analysis step in a compiler is dividing a particular statement in the program into a set of tokens. So suppose we have written a statement in the program, sum is equal to a plus 5, and we put a semicolon. So in case we have done this, the program or the compiler has to understand what are the different things that it belongs to. So what are the different tokens that it can recognize from this, and everything that we write in a statement should belong to any one valid token. So first it sees that SUM, so as a whole it belongs to the first token and it is identified as a identifier. Next, when it looks into equal to symbol, it recognizes this as a operator. Next, it sees the alphabet A before it goes to plus and recognize this as an identifier. Then it sees a plus again and it knows that it is a class of operators, and 5 belongs to the class of literal or an integer literal, and semicolon is a separator. So once it knows that it belongs to one of the tokens, so it knows that the language or the statement that we have written in the program conforms to the set of tokens available for that language. So this part of identifying whether it is an identifier or an operator or a separator belongs to the job of the automata. Next is syntax analysis. So syntax analysis is also known as parsing. The syntax analysis is also known as parsing. So in the parsing process, we are checking the semantics of the language. And the lexical analysis process is checking the syntax of the language. So the semantics of the language has to be checked from the syntax analysis procedure. So it sees whether you conform to the rules of the language. There are several different parsers which are available that will do the job for us. So the second class of application is verifying the circuits. When we talk about verifying the circuits, this is nothing but verifying the electronic circuits. So we have seen parity checkers and counters in the third semester. So all those circuit designs can be automated using the finite automata. So along with this, suppose we want to model a real world problem, maybe simplest of the form, that is the operation of a switch. So just to model the operation of a switch, we can draw a small automata and we can show how the switch works. So we know that the switch has got only two states. Now the first will be the off state and the second one will be the on state. So these are the only two states that the switch operates on. We know that when we give one input, that is maybe pressing the switch once is going to take you from off to on state, and when it is in the on state, giving an input, that is nothing but pressing the switch, is going to take you to the off state. So if you look at this diagram here, you will theoretically somehow understand how the switch operates. So this is why an automata is used. So as we have already written a very simple automata here, the states of an automata are represented with circles, and an input and a transition from one state to another state is given by a arrow mark. Any input that you give is marked on the transitions. So in the on state, if you press the off, you are going to the off state. When you are there in the off state, if you are pressing on, it is going to the on state. So this is the input marked on the transitions. Arrow marks define the transition from one state to another state. The states are represented as a circle. So apart from these two, which are very specific to the engineering discipline, there are several other uses of automata also. So the first one could be the word search, which is used in several search engines. The second one is we have vending machines. They are also called as automatic vending machines. So you would have seen a vending machine which will accept some cash and dispense some products automatically. So those machines and their operations can be modeled and designed using automatas. Apart from that, we have communication protocols whose operations can be depicted using the automatas. And we have several video games and artificial intelligence applications which will use these automata to make some analysis and model the designs. So far, we have been discussing about abstract machines called as automatas. So any machine needs commands. So it has to pick up some commands, operate on those commands and give us the output. So we need to know what is the kind of language that a machine understands. So formal languages are a class of languages which are used to model these automatas. So we'll see the distinction between natural language and a formal language, and we'll also know why natural languages cannot be applied to model these machines. So whenever we have a natural language, the problem with the natural languages in using them with machines is that it is very context sensitive language. So suppose we take up a word, the meaning of the word could differ depending upon the different scenarios. So for example, let's take up the word charge. So when you are talking about charge in terms of physics, it could mean either a positive charge or a negative charge. The same word charge, when we are using in terms of some outdoor games, could be moving towards the opponent. So the word charge picks up several meanings depending upon the context. But the machine is not capable of understanding what is the exact meaning, what you intend to tell the machine. So therefore, natural languages are never a choice for working with machines. That is why we came up with formal languages whose meaning do not change given in any context. Therefore, we know several formal languages. We have studied several formal languages such as C and C++. Suppose we write a statement in the program saying that count is equal to count plus 1. So any statement like this will not have a second meaning irrespective of where we write it within a program. So count is a variable and the meaning of the statement is to increment the value of the count by 1. So the machine will do what you are instructing it to do and will not do anything more or anything less. So that is why the choice of the languages to work with the machines is a formal language always. So therefore, we have completed with knowing what are the basic things that we have to know before we even start learning the subject. So now we will deal with the central concepts that are there in the automata theory. So now we are going to discuss about what are the central concepts which are there in the automata theory. We'll see a definition and we'll also check for examples. So even before we start the central concepts of automata theory, so we know that when we start learning the English language, the preliminary step that we are going to take is to learn what are alphabets. After learning what are alphabets, we move ahead to frame words. After we know words, we construct sentences, and once we know how to write sentences, we may write paragraphs. So likewise, in the formal languages also, we start defining what are alphabets. So alphabets are nothing but the entire set of symbols what are going to be there in the formal languages. So alphabets are nothing but the entire range of symbols that are going to be there in a formal language. So once we know what are the constituent symbols, we can frame strings. So these are very similar to the words. After we know what are strings, the collection of all these strings, what we call as a sentence in English language, will become a language in the formal languages. So the hierarchy is knowing the alphabets. After we know what are the alphabets, we'll move ahead to know what are strings. So after we know what are strings, we move ahead and understand how to frame languages which are collection of strings. So now the very first thing that we are going to learn is what is an alphabet. An alphabet is represented with the symbol sigma, and it is defined as a finite set of symbols. So we may define several symbols for different set of alphabets. Suppose we take up an example of a binary alphabet. So a binary alphabet is going to contain the symbols 0 and 1. So therefore, sigma of a binary alphabet is going to consider the sigma, which is nothing but the alphabet of a binary, is going, the binary alphabet is going to consist of the symbol 0 and 1. An English alphabet is going to consist of the characters from A to Z, also the uppercase characters from A to Z. So we understood that alphabet is a set, and therefore we are using the same set notation in order to define the symbols of that alphabet. So the first example that we have written is a binary alphabet, and the second example that we have written is a English alphabet. So these are the set of symbols. Now next, once we know what are alphabets, which are individual symbols, we move ahead to know what are strings. Strings are usually represented as lowercase alphabets, and usually the alphabets W, S, T, and we may define strings as the set of symbols drawn from some alphabet. So, strings can be defined as a set of symbols drawn from some alphabet. Now, if I consider these two alphabet, the first one being the binary alphabet and the second one being the English alphabet, I can frame strings from each one of them. Now, if I consider the very first alphabet, that is the binary alphabet, I can define the string which is W to be 0 and 1. So, it has got two symbols. So, these are the set of symbols which are drawn from a particular alphabet. Next, if I want to define another string which is S, it could be ant. So, these are the symbols which are drawn from the English alphabet. So, strings are nothing but the collection of symbols. Now, we will define what is an empty string. So, we can see that in both of these strings there is at least one symbol. Now, we define what is an empty string. An empty string is the one that contains no symbols at all. So, therefore, an empty string is represented with the symbol epsilon. So, epsilon is EPSILON. So, an epsilon represents an empty string. Next, we move ahead and see what is Kleene star. So, what is Kleene star? Next, we will move ahead to see what is Kleene star. So, Kleene star is represented as sigma to the power of sigma star. Kleene star is represented with the symbol sigma star. It is a set of all possible strings that can be drawn or shaped from any alphabet. Now, suppose we take up the example of the binary alphabet, that is 0 and 1. We may frame different strings by picking up one of the symbols from the alphabet, or 2 at a time or 3 at a time, and so on. So, once we define this sigma star, we may write the definition as sigma star is equal to epsilon union sigma to the power of 1 union sigma to the power of 2 union sigma to the power of 3, and so on. So, once we write a so on here, we have to imagine that this is a infinite set. So, we may write epsilon. This is same as sigma to the power of 0. That means, we are picking up 0 symbols at a time to frame the string. So, here sigma to the power of 1, we are picking up 1 symbol at a time in order to frame the string. Sigma to the power of 2, we are picking up 2 symbols at a time in order to frame the string, and likewise sigma to the power of 3, we are picking up 3 symbols to form the string. So, once we look at this set here, so sigma star can be written as the set of strings. So, first we will have sigma to the power of 0. So, if we do not pick up any symbol, we are left with an empty string. So, therefore, we write the empty string here. Next, sigma to the power of 1. So, we pick up 1 symbol at a time and frame 2 strings. So, 0 is the first string and 1 is the second string by picking up 1 symbol at a time from alphabet sigma, binary alphabet. Next, we have sigma to the power of 2. So, we are picking 2 at a time. So, the strings that can be formed are 0 0, 0 1, 1 0, 1 1. So, likewise, we can frame sigma to the power of 3. So, this set is infinite. So, next, once we have understood what is a string and we also know the concept of Kleene star. So, how we frame the, now that we know the concept of strings, we will understand what are the different functions which can be applied on strings. So, the first one is length of a string. Suppose S is a string, the length of the string is represented by mod of S. It will give us the count of the number of symbols which are there in the string. For example, if S is equal to CAT, then we know that the length of S is equal to 3. So, we have 3 symbols in the string, therefore, the length of S is 3. We can also define the function which tells us how many times a particular character has appeared in the string, and that is represented with hash. We write C as a subscript and say some string T. So, this is a function which is going to tell us the number of times a particular character is appearing in the string given as a input. For example, if T is equal to 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, and we want to know how many times the number 1 has appeared in the string. Therefore, we are going to write it as hash. We will write the subscript as 1 because we are looking for the occurrences of 1, and we are giving T as the input. So, it is going to search in the string T for the number of ones, and it is going to tell us how many are there. So, therefore, it is going to count 3 ones here, and it is going to give us a count as 3. So, likewise, if you want to count the number of zeros which are there in the string T, we may represent it like this, and the count is going to be given as 2. Next, we will move on to concatenation. So, concatenation is nothing but, suppose there are a string S and T, suppose there are 2 different strings S and T. The concatenation of S with T can be represented as or ST simply. So, it is nothing but the string T follows the string S. So, string T is appended to string S. So, this is the concatenation of string. Suppose we have S is equal to good and T is equal to by. The concatenation of these 2 strings can be represented as S concatenated with T or simply ST, which is equal to good followed by. So, it is simply the string S followed by the string T. So, this is called as the concatenation of 2 strings. So, once we know what is the concatenation of 2 strings, we have to know that epsilon is the identity of concatenation. So, we have a string X, you concatenate it with epsilon. So, epsilon being an empty string is not going to change the string X in any way. So, therefore, we either concatenate it towards the right side or we concatenate it towards the left side. The string, the resultant string is going to be the same X. Also, we have to know that the concatenation is associative. That is, for every S, T and W. Suppose there are 3 strings S, T and W. So, for all S, T and W, you concatenate S and T with W or S with TW, the resultant is going to be the same. So, these concepts relate to concatenation of 2 strings. Next, we will see what is the replication of a string. So, replication of the string for any integer I is given as w to the power of I, where w is a string. So, it can be formally represented as w of I plus 1 is equal to wi concatenated with the same w. For example, if we have w is equal to a and we need a to the power of 3. So, hence, w is represented as the string a. So, this string contains only one character, that is what we have to understand from this. So, to the power of 3 is going to repeat the entire w 3 times. So, therefore, a is repeated 3 times. We will take up another example. Suppose we have car as the string and we say to the power of 2. So, we are going to replicate the entire w, that is nothing but CAR 2 times. So, the resultant will be CAR followed by CAR. So, this is what the replication will be doing. So, w of I plus 1 is equal to wi concatenated with w. So, this is nothing but, if we consider this as w and 2 as I plus 1. So, we have w to the power of I. So, nothing but w to the power of 1 concatenated with w to the power of 1. So, 2 times car is repeating here. ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ನಂಬರ್ ಎಷ್ಟಾಗಿತ್ತು? 8 ಐದಂತ. So, the last operation that we can perform on the string is the string reversal. So, we know the meaning of what is a reverse. So, anything that is written backwards is called as the reverse. So, if there exists any string w, its reverse is given by w to the power of capital R. Suppose w is equal to ABC, then the reverse of w can be written as CBA. There are two things that we have to remember when we are consider the reverse of a string. In case the w and the length of the w is treated as 0. So, there are two things that we have to learn about the reversal of the strings. The first thing is, in case we have a string whose length is 0. So, it implies that we are talking about the epsilon. Then the reverse of the string is equal to the original string W and it is equal to epsilon. So, this is the first concept that we have to know when we are talking about a reversal of the string. The second case is, in case the length of the W is not equal to 0, it has to be something which is greater than or equal to 1. So, we are dealing with strings here in the second point whose length is at least 1. So, for that we have the identity of how we form the reverse of the string. There exists A that belongs to sigma. So, A is a symbol which belongs to sigma. There exists U that belongs to sigma star. So, since it is a sigma star, we know that sigma star is a set of strings. Therefore, U has to be treated as a string. So, W can be represented as U and A. That is, if we have a string W which is given as COLLEGE, college. So, it has got 7 characters. So, there is A which represents a single symbol and U that represents a string. So, the entire W can be split up into 2 things. So, the last character is nothing but A and the rest of the characters are treated to be the string U. So, that is how we split up W. A being a single character and the last character, and U being the rest of the characters apart from the last character. Now, in case if we have already divided W as U and A, the reverse of the string W is given by A followed by the reverse of U. So, therefore, now the reverse of the same string which is represented by WR, the identity is A followed by the reverse of U. So, we are going to write A first. So, we are going to write E first and we are going to form the reverse of U and fill up the rest of the places. So, first we are going to write G, then we are going to write E, L, L, O, C. So, here we have UR and here we have A. So, this identity is going to give us the reverse of the original string which is W given as college. So, these are the fundamentals that we have to know about automata. So, these are the several central concepts of the automata theory. Stop. Yeah,